All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. So thank you so much for joining us today, Sharon. Sharon serves as the manager of Avantis Healthcare and Shady Grove Medical Center. Is that in Maryland?
Yes.
Wonderful. And Sharon holds a bachelor's degree in nursing from Albany State University and multiple sterilization related certifications. She's also our past president of ISHM, and she has served on numerous boards and committees. So welcome, Sharon. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We are so pleased to have you. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I think it's 11 o'clock here, which is 10 there. I'm glad to be with you today. Today, I wanted to share with you, I had some thoughts going on. I've done leading outside the boundaries before. I did it for the Aesculap Academy in Germany. And I've done it for several people. But as I got to thinking about us here in America, and especially pre-post COVID, I thought that maybe we would benefit from seeing how well off we are versus the other parts of the world. Because I think when you talk to people and you tell them what they should do, and you try to motivate them and stimulate them to understand why they should do it, because we should do no harm to the patients, that they don't always understand how blessed we really are in America with the equipment that we do have. Everybody doesn't have everything, but we all have something, and we need to work within our means to make that work. We all claim we're leaders. And so if you're a leader, you're able to lead outside the norm. You're able to do your best with no problem. So therefore, I came back with Leading Outside the Boundaries, a look at sterilization processes in Bangladesh and Tanzania. Let me see. I thought I was good. Okay. The objectives today: define the importance of leadership, discuss the methods used to process instruments in these countries, evaluate through pictures where these countries are in comparison to America. So I find that as much as I get up and talk and I try to make these classes fun, sometimes pictures tell the story a lot better than I could with any words to hit home to you. So a little background. I've been a leader for most of my life. I've been an uninvited leader for most of my life. And then as life went on, I did the things necessary to become a leader. So leading is important. If you're not leading, you're following. Following is very important, but you have to determine which it is you want to be. But a little background, I've done mission work in the country of Bangladesh. I've done 10 missions since 1998. And then I've done missions all over the world. I've done teaching events all over the world, but I had the opportunity to work with Christina Fast with her program, SPECT, and go into the country of Tanzania and teach a course, a sterilization course for 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. And I was able to see the methods that they use to process instruments and how we felt they could do better. Yet here in America, where we had everything we needed, we weren't necessarily doing what we needed to do. So thus comes our class today. So leaders by definition, a good leader always gets the job done by any means necessary. Within getting the job done, good leaders are always accountable and responsible to their processes. Good leaders keep pace with technological innovations, and they think outside the box. So a good leader stays abreast to what's new, what's going on, what's coming on the horizon. They actually read the articles in the Process magazine. Let's just stop there. They don't put them under their beds or whatever my people do with theirs. Every time I say, did you get your Process magazine? It's like asking the secret question. Everybody has a blank look and they got to go home and do a search and rescue of the magazine. So I've told them to stop putting it under their bed or over in the trash can, to just bring it into work and put it in their locker so that when I ask about it, or we want to go over something that's written, everybody can pull their magazine out. I'm fortunate to have 24 of 26 employees certified, and some of them have more than 1 or 2 certifications, but they still have not understood the importance of the literature that is put out there by our own association, of which they're all members, and all the other information that's out there by all the other companies. They just take it, you know, it's not important. It is important. You should not wait until it's time to recertify to try to get your 12 points or your 18 points or your 24 points. You should have already done that throughout the year. And so I tell them, because they tell me they're leaders. We talk about the fact that they have potential. Well, potential is only as good as the person that has it doing something with it. You can have potential up to your eyebrows, but if you don't work with it, it's just potential. You could be, you could have been, you should have done, but you have to, if you're a leader, you get it done. Leaders are able to see things and see beyond the line that's in front of them. That's very important. I found that with mission work, it was most important because I went into countries that were not America. They had no FDA, they had no CDC technically, they had no ANSI, AMI, ST 79, 58, 91. They didn't have any of those things. So they had to make what they had work by what they had read, what they had pulled off the internet. So the internet is worldwide and people pull things off of the internet and then they try to make it work with what they actually have. They have to think outside of the box. What could I do? What could be done? What are some questions I could ask to make this process go better? I look at the internet and I find that most countries are not putting their instruments in bleach. What can we do to stop that process? Not, that's what we got, we're gonna live with it. And so a good leader is able to think outside of the box, and they're able to use what we like to say in the medical field, critical thinking skills. Being able to think about something, come to an answer that you're willing to live with, that isn't gonna harm anyone, because remember, our job is to harm no one, and it's going to get the job done. Are all of the decisions I've ever made in my life in the field of sterilization, have they always been the best? No, they may not have always been the best, but it's what I could do at that time. At least I was thinking about what we could do. I remember a time when the water valve broke in Decon and the water was running down the hall, and they called me at home to say, Ms. Golden, the water's running down the hall. It's on its way to the administration wing. We don't know what to do. We can't mop it this fast. We can't suck it up. And I said, well, has anyone cut the water off at the valve? They were like, the valve? You know, the water valve. You go in there and cut the water off. If you cut the water off, it'll stop running. They had not thought about it. They had gotten so caught up in water on the floor and moving that no one used their actual mind. Everybody has a water valve. You have them in your house. I mean, you should know where they are so you can cut your water off when you start having a flood. And so they just didn't think about it. So it's all about being able to come up with an answer that will work. The importance of leadership is accomplishing necessary priorities and initiatives and being able to perform within unfamiliar environments. Everything's not going to always be brought to you tied up in a nice, pretty bow. You're going to come into your SPD one day and just find things just chaotic. And you're in America. So figure how it must be in a different country where they don't know they're doing wrong. They don't know you shouldn't do it. We're in America where we have the ability, and we're blessed to have ANSI, AMI, the AORN, the CDC, guidelines to guide us. And the sad thing is that we don't follow rules always. And that's something with I find with human beings. You know, we're creatures that don't like to follow rules, as in our predicament now with COVID-19. Something as simple as put your mask on. We're having big discussions, long dissertations, meetings, people dying, funerals. We're still talking about getting a mask on. Get your shot. We're still talking. Why would I have to get a shot? Yet and still in this country, America, Anytime we've come up with a rule, we've always fought it. We've pushed and we fought until it was made an actual law, such as, I'm old enough, I can date myself. I remember when we rode around in cars with no seatbelts and it was okay. I remember when we put our babies in our laps in the front seat and went everywhere we wanted to go and it was okay. Now, the side effects from that was that people died a lot more, going through windshields, out the door, babies were flung out of cars all the time and died. But when they started talking about you must wear your seatbelt, Americans pushed back until they made it a law. Once they made it a law, I can only speak for me. I never get in the car without putting my seatbelt on. I don't care if I'm just going to the corner. My thought is I could get hit at the corner and it could be devastating. Therefore, I need to have my seatbelt on. And I wasn't one of those that was fighting it, but we follow once we've pushed back. Well, the time we take to push back on rules and regulations, you may lose a patient. A patient's life may be at stake while you're not doing what you're supposed to do because you just don't believe in following rules, or you believe in finding shortcuts to do something. You see, when we talk about IFUs, the IFU is written and cleared by the FDA, 510K clearance, and it's done so that you have a document that guides you on what you're supposed to do if it's a good document. I will go out there with you and say there's some very bad IFUs, but for the ones that are good, they give you step by step. The steps are there because you're supposed to do them in that order. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're not supposed to do number 6 before number 1. And you're supposed to follow it, not come up with a shortcut. That's not your job to say, let me see how I can do this faster. If it says soak for 5 minutes, it means soak for 5 minutes, not your perception, which is actually 2 minutes. So you have to follow the rules, and then we have to be willing to accomplish our necessary priorities and initiatives. And in sterile processing, that is all about getting your product to the patient and having it used on the patient without any untoward event, plain and simple. From clean to checking it for workability, to being sure that it is clean, to making sure you have the right instruments in the tray, to making sure that tray is processed on the right medium, be it steam, be it low temperature sterilization. That's your priority and your initiatives are to get it done. Performing within unfamiliar environments, some of us have ventured out to foreign areas, and so we have to be able to function. And even though you may be in a country that doesn't have rules and regulations, you should always, as a leader, be on point with what you know the rules and regulations are in your country. You can't go to someone else's country and force your rules on them. But what you will find is that they need that information and they want to do better. So we're going to start with Bangladesh. That's where I've spent the most time. And think about your pack and prep. Some of you all have nice little individual stations. Some of us have stations that we share. But in America, there's none of us that I know of that are working off the floor. That's not one of our stations because we know the floor is dirty. We cannot objectively explain to someone that we're working off the floor because it's easier or it was all I had left, because we wouldn't understand why you were down there. But in this particular country, at this particular hospital, they also did linen. We don't do much linen in America anymore, but I am old enough to have done linen. They have to check the linen. They have to fold it so that it unfolds correctly on the sterile field. And here they are on the floor, putting their sheets together for surgery. You see the ladies holding it. You see all the sheets around them. And you see the pile that they've made over to my right, maybe your left. Then you see what I would call a kitchen table over to my left with a kitchen chair. And they have their extra instruments sitting there. They put like instruments together or they put their sets together and they have to tie. They don't have stringers, but they did the next best thing. They went and got some string. And as they put their instruments together, they are standing there, stringing those instruments together to go into a pack. Now we have stringers, and I don't understand what happens to the end of the string. I bought all kinds of stringers. I bought the ones that you have to click together at the end. I bought the ones with the tops that come off, and stringer tops just go somewhere. I guess they go with the Adsons and the towel clips and the other instruments into the trash. But here they don't have that. And the only choice they had was to use string to put their instruments together for a particular case. What you will see is that they're working in an area that must not really be a sterile processing. It's a room that had all kinds of windows, and you'll see they have a window open and a towel sitting in the window. Everybody that's there is happy with that towel flopped over in the window because they don't have any guidance as to keeping negative or positive space, positive and negative. Negative over on decon, positive on the clean side. They're just happy to be inside. And so they opened the window because they needed some air. And somebody had a towel off their shoulder, and that's where they left it. And they're okay with that. Well, those are the little things that when you get to know the people, you can talk about why we need to keep these windows closed. This is a country that's full of mosquitoes. Of course, with mosquitoes comes geckos. Geckos eat the mosquitoes. So we're happy to see the gecko, because if the geckos are there, we don't have so many mosquitoes biting us. But if they kept their windows closed, maybe we wouldn't have so many mosquitoes in the actual surgical suite. So you get to talk to them about different things. And so they have no choice. In this picture, there is no choice. In your hospital, you have choice. You have choice to do what's right and to do what's right each and every time, because you should be working for the patient. Plain and simple. That's what we should be there for. That's what we should be doing. So this is from one of the last missions that I went on to that country, and it happens to be in Bangladesh. And what I want to show you by this picture is that we go into this country and we perform free surgery on adults. We don't do children because there are enough groups doing children. But what we found through Project Bangladesh and Doctors Without Borders is that no one is taking care of the adults. And if the adults don't live, the children may have their cleft palate fixed, but their mom and dad are dead from colon cancer or breast cancer. So we started working with Doctors Without Borders back in 1998. The women have a lot of female problems. We do a lot of hysterectomies. We started going into the country and doing free surgery on people who would never get surgery. They would die. They were never going to have enough money to have surgery. And we do this by letting them know we're coming. So they know 2 years in advance what team is coming, what month they're coming, how long they're going to be there. And in this country, they like making banners and stuff. And they put the banner up in the villages that says, this team is coming and they're looking for patients. You need to be screened before they get here, so that when they get here, you already have your ticket, your number, to know that you're going to have your surgery unless something happens. And this just happens to be the team that year. We took a general surgeon, a gynecologist, and then we took the PACU nurse, we took the anesthesiologist, we took the CRNA. I went as the SPD technician, materials management, and then we had our surgical first assistants and our surgical scrub and our nurse that was going to circulate the room. And we go in self-supporting, self-sufficient, with our own instruments, our own, for the most part, our own equipment. Companies were happy to help me. They give me the gowns, the gloves, everything I need. We come in and they show us where we're going to work, and we set it up. And we work for about 7 to 14 days doing surgeries every day. It's not a vacation. It's good to see other countries, but that's not what we go there for. We go there to provide a service. I started going because I was concerned about the quality of the instrumentation that was being used that we took from America and who was caring for it. And at that time, the physician told me that the tech and the nurse would take care of the instruments. And I said, that's really odd because they don't take care of them in America. So they're going to go all the way around the world to a foreign country and start caring for instruments. I don't think so. He went and he asked his team, he said, who's taking care of the instruments? And they looked at him and said, you taking the SPD person, right? Because that's not what we do. And so because I had opened up my big mouth, he came back to me and said, we don't have nobody. Will you go? And for that first trip, I was like, well, okay, not knowing what I was going to get into, but being willing to go and to try. And that's where I found out that I am a good volunteer, and I don't mind doing volunteer work in other places. I adapt. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. And if you're able to enact change, then be the change, show the change, and work the change. And I've been doing that ever since. So here I am. I'm in my sterile processing. Remember what you have. Think back to each of you all. Think back to your little hospital that you complain about, what you don't have and what you wish you had and what you saw at the Johns Hopkins had, or what you saw that the University of Virginia Hospital had. Think back to that and look at this and understand you're an SPD tech, where sometimes we stand up and we say what we will not do because that's not in the scope of my job. And understand that when I went to do this mission, my job was to take care of my instruments. And by taking care of my instruments, I physically cleaned them all. I physically reprocessed, checked them all, and sterilized them, or high-level disinfected, whichever came first. And I had this little area. So in the first picture, you actually see me, it's actually going, I'm going backwards. But in the first picture on the right, I had to set up the table. So there was nobody there because they were doing their own fuel cases. We did our own. You see, we have an actual wrap table cover from America, but we didn't want to use them all covering the bottom table, which was really nasty to us. So we would use muslin to cover the table, which is what they do all the time. So I have set this table up for a case. And then they taught me to use, in each hand, I have something called a cheetle forceps. It's just a forceps with a tooth and a clasp on the other side. And it's a bit of work to learn how to work with these instruments because they're not user-friendly. But I finally learned, and I was able to set a table up and cover a table. So in the middle picture, I'm actually unfolding that table cover. On the picture that's on my right, I have actually opened it up as aseptically as possible. And I'm now on the last picture on the left, I am covering that table. And you see, I have a cheetle forceps in each hand. And I'm trying to make sure I'm not touching the table or anything. This is what I had to use in the middle of my sterile processing department is where we did this. What you will see in the middle picture behind me is you'll see the sterilizer. That round instrument, that round container with a big metal top on it is the actual steam sterilizer. When you look at the picture where I've actually covered the table, you will see down from there a bucket on the floor, and you'll see a metal box. That's my boiling pot. So on one end, I have a sterilizer, then I have a table with the sink, the decontam sink in the middle behind me. And on the other side, the boiling pot. Now, you know, we couldn't work in America like that. We'd be busy writing papers and writing each other up. This wouldn't work, but they have no choice. That's how they set it up. And they did not realize when they set up this area that it was set up incorrectly. I couldn't go there and tell them we can't work. I had to make it do. So when it was setting up table time, we didn't run the sink. We didn't run the sterilizer, and we didn't bother the boiling pot. We'd set up our tables, we'd move them out where they could be stay surgically aseptic for the next case. But this is what we had to deal with, the OR table setup. And it's all we had. And I made it work. I will tell you that at this particular hospital, they did have a bigger sterilizer, as you will see. They sterilize, we have Genesis, Case Medical, Asculab, we got all kinds of containers in America. They have what I call cookie jars. And these are the round metal jars that you see. The man has 2 or 3 in one hand, he's got one under his arm. You know that's not acceptable in America. We can't put the tray under our arm, but they have no choice. They're trying to get ready to get into, when you see the middle picture, to put all of those containers into that sterilizer. That is an old-fashioned steam sterilizer. We had some in America at one time. We've moved on, praise the Lord. But that's what they had. And they make those containers fit in there. And yes, those machines get up to 270 degrees Fahrenheit. They will do 4, 10, 12 minutes. They'll do whatever you want it to do. It's just that that type of sterilizer to me is dangerous. I am really scared of them. And after dropping off my instruments, I usually run to another area. But these guys, their only job was to run the sterilizer. So SPD techs did not run sterilizers in this hospital. This was someone's specific job. They've been running it forever, and this is what they do. And you see some of them have on scrubs. That means they came from an actual surgical unit, but the man that's running the sterilizer is always, for whatever reason, in his street clothes because they decided they didn't need to be in scrubs. I would have wanted to clean that whole area and everybody would be in scrubs. If you look at the picture really well, you'll see corrugated cardboard boxes up on the shelf in the room with the sterilizer. You'll see all kinds of things if you scrutinize this picture. But when you scrutinize the picture, what I want you to think about is how you shouldn't have corrugated cardboard boxes in your area, but sometimes we do. They have no choice. What is our excuse? That's the question I have for you today. What is our excuse for having corrugated cardboard when we know we shouldn't? And we can remove ours. We have room. We don't have to have ours up on the shelf. Is it because we just aren't paying attention? Is it because we don't care? Is it because we don't know? Because if you don't know, then you need to be paying more attention to articles and you need to be reading and you need to study your ST-79 and see what it says about corrugated cardboard boxes in your area. But back to their picture, they actually tag their little containers. You'll see the picture at the end with the two guys with a little piece of tape that says ABD set. Or it says abdominal hysterectomy. And in that round container, they have all the instruments they need for that particular case. They're not set up by case, they're set up by specialty, meaning if an ABD needs 2 straight males and a curved male, they may have 6 straight males and 6 curved males in that container because they're going to open that container all day long as they do cases and pull out the instruments they need as they need them. You know that would not work for us in America. We'd be writing somebody up. Here I am in a different hospital, well, the same hospital now that I see my boiling pot. Remember when you saw the picture of me setting up the table, you actually saw basically a sink behind me. That is my decontamination sink in the very first picture that you see. When you look straight down that picture, you see the boiling pot, the big boiling pot. You see the tabletop boiling pot, which they run more often. Behind me, you see my clean setup for where I'm going to put my instruments once I have cleaned them and rinsed them as best as possible. I'm laying them on that particular table that we have set up with a clean muslin sheet. Clean to HLD. I was not going to the sterilizer with these instruments. I was only going to high-level disinfect. Ms. Golden, high-level disinfect. That's not what we do in America. You're absolutely right. We do not high-level disinfect steamed instruments. But in Bangladesh, I had no choice. They were not going to run that sterilizer, the big one you just saw, for my one little hysterectomy set. They only ran the sterilizer so many times a day and through certain hours. And to conserve electricity, they cut them off. So I had to learn to use a boiling pot. I had to learn the methods for boiling. I actually wrote my fellowship paper on boiling, the answer to high-level disinfection of instruments. And yes, you can high-level disinfect instruments for surgery if that's all you've got. The basic thing for all instruments be not about your medium you're using, it always has to be clean. If it's clean, we can work with it. So I made sure I brought cleaning agents with me, and I brought brushes, and I brought everything I needed to be sure that my instruments, above all, were always clean. Companies gave me gowns and masks and face covers and gloves because I did not want to catch anything while I was over there working in circumstances that I knew were not up to par for America. But in America, we work in decon. You have people, you've seen them, they have on one glove. And we got boxes and boxes of gloves. In Bangladesh, they saved the gloves. As we take them off to throw them away, they would pick them up every night, go wash them, dry them, and have them ready to use another day. They called us wasteful Americans. But we will go to a decon with plenty of gloves. And because we're just there to rinse off the Adson that we thought was a little dirty, we will throw all the rules out the window about putting on your PPE, and we'll put on one glove. And we'll do what we need to do with that one hand. The differences, the comparisons of America versus emerging countries. In the middle picture, I've actually put my instruments into a boiling pot and they have boiled. Boiling requires 20 minutes. 20 minutes full boil, do not open the top, do not pass, go. Once they have boiled for 20 full minutes, it's called a rolling boil, you can actually remove them. You remove them with a Cheeto forceps, which I showed you in one of the first pictures. That's something you have to learn to do. I brought stringers with me, the ones that I could bring. Some of them were too long. We put our instruments on. So I had to be able to maneuver that Cheeto forceps on my string instruments out of the boiling pot to my table, which was considered to be a sterile setup. All in that little room where right on down the street there, not even 400 feet, was a decontam sink. Now I didn't have the ability to move the decontam sink on this trip. I thought it was the wrong place to be. I could say it all day long, but it didn't matter because they had nowhere else to put it. So I learned to live with it, think outside the box and work it. We only did one function in that area at a time. Either we were cleaning instruments, or we were processing instruments in the boiling pot, or we were setting up a sterile setup. We could not do all three at the same time. So it was hot in that little room. I do mean we was like in a steam bath. I had a steam bath every day, all day. And we were just talking about it, about how hot it was. The little nurses would be about to faint. They were carrying on. And I came in one day, the first picture you see is someone has showed up with some gowns on. They knew to put on some PPE over in there. And they're on the ladder giving us a fan. And you know, I almost fell out. I'm like, oh no, we can't have a fan. I know we hot, but no, y'all can't just start installing fans in the ceiling. You know, so we had that big discussion about the fan that they were putting up because their people have been complaining for a long time. I just happened to be there and said the same thing. And they were like, we've been talking about it for a long time and we got a fan and we're putting the fan up. When in Rome, you do as the Romans do. So now we had to rethink some things because now we had a fan that was going to blow over our heads while we were in there. I put this picture in just for fun. In this picture, my doctor, my general surgeon, decided he wanted to do a case that required a drill. We didn't bring a drill. He knew he was going to Bangladesh. He decided we could, you know, drill. Well, we didn't have a drill. But they were happy when he said, I need a drill to send these screws into this plate. They were like, oh, hold up, we got a drill. We were excited, really? She took us to the secret closet, which is behind her, that yellow cabinet. She opened it up with the key and she pulled out what you see in her, the Sears drill with a plug. We were like, oh. And she said, this is the drill. We were like, oh, we can't sterilize the drill. I got a boiling pot. I know good and well you don't put something with a plug in the boiling pot. And she was like, no, because I'm in Rome here. I'm in Bangladesh. She said, we'll show you. And we went in the room. That's the technician behind us in the picture who was going to accept this nice drill. She took her in the room and she showed her with some secret, we call it secret sauce. We pour the secret sauce on a rag, we wipe that drill off and we pass it to the physician and they plug it in. He drills what he needs to drill. They wipe it off with the secret sauce. They remove it from the room. They go and lock it back up in that cabinet till the next time it's needed. Now we could have sat there and said, Lord have mercy, this is not going to work. We were in Bangladesh. We didn't bring a drill. He didn't say he was going to do any drilling cases. But once he got there, he was just off the chain. So he had to use what we had. You know, I think that we each in our own way prayed a lot while we were on this particular mission because we were like, we can't afford for our patients to get infections. We were very concerned about that. So then on the next picture, you actually see instruments sitting on the floor. On this picture, these instruments are dirty. Someone finished a case in another area and they brought their dirty instruments, which was their practice, and they sit them on the floor because they were waiting for the person whose job it was to clean instruments to come and get it. We had this particular setup. This was the year that we had Kathy Dempsey as our speaker at the Isham meeting. And I had taken Leonard, the lizard, to Bangladesh. And Leonard had on his scrubs and his little hat. And this was the setup that we set up wrong. And Leonard was inspecting the instruments because we're in Bangladesh. We can do whatever we want to do. So it just shows you can't do that in America. You just can't do things. But over there, nobody was worried about that. I was concerned that we opened up all of these instruments. I was like, what are y'all getting ready to do? And it found out we were just doing a basic DNC. Do you see all the instruments on that string? I'm like, really? And we were like, we're not going to do this. We're just going to reprocess these instruments. But Leonard had already climbed up there and was actually taking an inspection of his own. And then I was concerned that the table was sitting there and the dirty instruments were on the floor. So I was like, we can't use these. And they were looking at me like, why? I'm like, because y'all got dirty instruments on the floor next to the table almost. And, you know, we're talking bacteria and viruses. I can't do it. And so we redid it. They didn't mind. We were doing the work. They didn't mind, but they thought we were crazy. Talking about what we use for cleaning agents. Over there, I told you the secret sauce, Savalon, which is kind of like our Pine Sol, is their secret sauce. They decided you can rub that on anything. It's kind of like us with the alcohol. Throw that on anything, you can use it. You know, so we're the same. We're in different countries, but we have same thoughts. It's alcohol, and you have to tell people alcohol is not a cleaning agent. They study cleaning with it. Well, they have Savalon, which is a kind of a cleaning agent, but it's not a cleaning agent you use for surgical services. But that was their secret sauce. They were proud to bring that out every time we wanted to wipe something down. When I asked about the instruments that were usually black, I said, what are you cleaning the instruments with? And they'd bring me out. They were using at this hospital, Vim. Effectively cleans grease and burnt marks. And they were proud that they had some Vim. I was just as proud that I came with Vesticide. I came with cases of Vesticide. Vesticide gives me my soaking part for the dirty instruments. And then on the other side, we would add it gives me the enzymatic pre-soak, and then it gives me the instrument cleaner. You mix them together and you can clean the instruments. And I was so happy because if nothing else, I could give the patients that we had there the opportunity to have clean instrumentation. We have cleaning agents. We don't always use them correctly. Some of us, if you don't have the actuator at your sink or a measuring device, you have so much cleaning agent in the sink, you got bubbles going forever. And you know we shouldn't have bubbles. You should be able to see all the way down to the bottom. With Vim, you can't see nothing. Once they put that in the water, it's bubbles and bubbles and bubbles and more bubbles. So you're not able to see what is even in your sink. It's a safety measure for us because we want to be sure that we don't get hurt on anything that's sharp. I don't know about you all, but I still today get knife handles with a blade attached. I'm very transparent. My OR is not perfect. Nobody knows how I got there, but it comes. And so if you have a sink full of bubbles and you reach into that water, you could hurt yourself. You could cut yourself. We use little sharp hooks. You have to be able to see what you're using. So the cleaning agent that you use not only needs to be clean, a cleaner, but you need to be able to see through it. I will tell you that Vesticide saved me for 10 missions. Back to the boiling pot. The boiling pot boils. A lot of times I didn't think the boiling pot was doing nothing because I have had instances in these trips where my boiling pot did not boil. We were sitting there waiting. You know, you need to be at 212 degrees to get boiling. And I think that I had a pot that stayed at 210. It never did boil. We had to make a decision when you talk about leadership. And at this particular hospital, when we looked out the door and saw the line of patients that we had that had gotten up days before to walk 10, 12 miles to meet us at the hospital, we decided that was not the time for me to hold on to my 212 degrees. 210 it was. But I wanted to show that boiling pots do boil. We had to get a new heating element the next day for that pot. But do you see all of the In the first picture, you see me with cheetah forceps lifting the instruments out of a rolling ball. That means that pot had got to 212, and those instruments had been boiling in that pot for 20 minutes. I was now removing them. But what I want you to see in the next picture is that we had to do all parts of the setup, the emesis basin, the compress basin, but look at all of the grunge around the top and in the bottom of the boiling pot, all of the chemicals from the water. And they boiled in that pot every day. They were happy. I wasn't so happy. I was trying to figure out as a leader how I was going to get that pot cleaned and when I was going to find time to clean that pot of all of that calcium deposits, phosphate, everything that it had. I had to think about that. But the pots do boil. And if you don't bother them, it does the job that we need to have boiled instruments be high level disinfected. It does what we need to get done. So that's Bangladesh. You think that you can't get worse. You've seen everything. And then you go to another emerging country. Tanzania, I call this Tanzania teaching and learning. So the one thing about them is that they're very scriptive. When you roll up to their little hospital, it has a sign. It tells you where you are. It tells you what they do. So if you need to have your leg amputated on that list in Swahili, if it doesn't say they do amputations, you know you got to keep moving. They don't do amputations, but they have learned some things looking at Google. They number their rooms. You see the sign says sterilization room behind a big wood door. You know, we wouldn't have a big wood door because you really can't clean the big wood door, but that's all they had. And so they got the big wood door. They have told you where you are. If you go there, you're in the sterilization room. And then the other one, the sign above it, I can't see it here, but it says sluice room. That's the room where they clean, they decontaminate and clean used instrumentation, and they wash linen. So the question I put there is, where am I? I'm either in the sterilization room or I'm in the sluice room. This is the sluice room. You got the biggest tub I ever seen, tallest tub I've ever seen. I thought surely that wasn't meant to get a real bath in because I would break my neck getting out after I broke my hip getting in. I just thought this is the biggest tub. But look at what's on the tub. There's some what I call floor brushes. You see paint peeling off the wall next to it. Someone had some work gloves they had at one point. The tub itself is filthy. But they clean in that tub every day. Until I got there looking crazy, everybody was happy. I'm like, what is this? Where am I? Because that's the type of person I am. They're like, you're in the sluice room. This is where we clean. This is where we do the work. This is where we clean the dirty instruments. Why are you so surprised? They're dirty. What are you trying to do? I'm like, how do you clean dirty in dirty? You know, it's the reason why I don't take baths. Because I feel like if you get in the bathtub and all the dirt rolls off of you and you're sitting in the dirty water, are you really clean? So then if I take a bath, I have to stand up after the bath to take a shower to wash the dirt. So I'm just funny like that. So I don't do baths. So I'm like, the tub is dirty. They looked at me. And then I knew, well, nothing I can do because I didn't bring any Comet and I didn't bring any spray to get this. So I said, we got to work with it. We would work within that. At the last picture, you see 3 buckets, and that will be important as we move through this pictures a little bit more. Those are your 3 sinks that you have in your hospital. Remember the comparison. Think about your decontamination area and think about this decontamination area and understand how blessed you are for whatever it is you have. If you have 3 stainless steel sinks, you are blessed above many because they don't even have a sink sometimes. And if they do, they may not be working. Water may not be running to the sink. They have all kinds of problems in emerging countries where this doesn't work. And in this instance, they have a big tub that they're throwing everything in. I came back one time and they had sheets in the tub. I came back another time and had some bowls. So they just do everything. But the one thing they were consistent about was those 3 buckets that you see there. You see the red top, black top, green top. We will talk about it. So as I moved around, and we will go back and forth between different hospitals, I came to this particular hospital. Now they had the window open and they was drying their boots and shoes in the window with it open. I'm like, y'all can't have the window open. You're letting in flies and bugs. They're like, we drying our shoes and our aprons, and this is where we dry stuff. I'm like, okay. Brushes. I talked about, do you have brushes to clean instruments? They were like, yeah, we got all kinds of brushes. You see the brushes they got? What instrument are you effectively cleaning with that brush? And at some point, the one on the very last picture should have went to the trash. But just like us in America, when we have brushes that we've brushed and flattened them out and we save them, they save their brushes too. So an SPD tech is an SPD tech. Bad habits seem to travel around the world. We know that if a brush is flattened out, you can't clean anything with it. You should dispose of it, not sit it on the back of the sink for the next person. We also know that brushes need to be cleaned at the end of, for me, every shift. You send your brushes through the washer, decontaminator. That is something you should be doing if it is reusable. If it is disposable, then you throw your brush away at the end of the day. But you should be doing something. In the sink in the middle, there's a sink, the water didn't run, there's brushes in the window. The brush up against the window is the brushes that I'm used to using in labor and delivery. When they wash the baby's head, that's the brush they try to wash some of the gunk out of the baby's head with. And then they have another, what I call floor wall brush sitting up there. There's a syringe in the window, there's a canister upside down, and the window is peeling on the shelf. And there's mold growing from the bottom of the window. But that's all they had. That's all they had. And they were doing the best they could do. Think about what you have. Compare yourself to this the next time you want to say, it's terrible here. I can't believe this is all we have. I can't believe that we can't do better. Think about these pictures in your mind. Sometimes this would give me a nightmare. The other thing they do here is they tell you up ahead, and we don't do this in America too much unless you self-pay. They tell you when you roll up to the hospital how much it's going to cost to get a procedure done. So you know whether you need to go back home and work some more. Plain and simple. You either have that amount of money, those are in shillings, or you don't. 5,000 shillings in American money is not even $5. And they don't have that. But they tell you, this is a hospital. You see the little truck in front of the hospital. You see the nurses walking in. And that was my room to go into, my little sterile room there. But they tell you what it's going to cost. In this particular hospital, they weren't working on the floor. They're working on the surgical bed. But at least they knew to come off the floor. The bed on the last picture, they have a patient use bed. You see the bed in the picture. And behind the bed, you see someone with gloves on going into the red top sink. Decon is in the room with the patient. Now, y'all know we can't do that. They do the surgery and they got the instruments soaking in the same room. The room on the far end is where they kept their extra instruments, their corrugated cardboard boxes. They had a nice little cabinet to put the instruments in, but they got corrugated boxes in there. And then you see they had some cans on the top and just junk. Sometimes the same thing we do at our workstations. There's junk on our workstations that shouldn't be there. Your workstation should be clean. It should be orderly. You should be able to clean it at the end of every shift. So you see the clean storage and the cleaners. Everything is all in one little area and we're happy. They were actually folding items to make packs for the surgeons, to make packs, to make dressings. They make their own dressings there. This is how we do it. So the 3 sinks. Now that in the last picture, they had some sinks, but the sinks didn't work. And they just like buckets. I came to the conclusion they like buckets because I didn't even know I could get buckets in so many colors, but they got the red bucket, the black bucket, the yellow bucket. One bucket has your, at that time, bleach solution. The middle bucket had your cleaning solution, and the yellow bucket was your rinse solution. Now, the problem is that we should never put instruments in bleach because it takes off the passivation, and instruments just don't belong in bleach. Since we were there, just before we left, the World Health Organization made a statement and a rule that they can no longer soak instruments in bleach. That was due in part to Christina Fass's papers and all the work she's done over the years over in the continent of Africa, pushing to stop putting instruments in bleach. So up until then, though, this is what they did. And they would take the top off, drop the instruments in, put the top on, and then you'd come back at some point and move them over to the next bin and then to the yellow bin. My concern with the yellow bin is how many times do y'all rinse instruments in what you call the rinse water? And when do you change the rinse water? And when do you change the cleaning water? Because I never saw that process. And they were happy with what they were doing. And I will tell you, I had instruments come out of there that were dirty. Well, in our class, this particular group of people had been taught how to do it right. And we were not using buckets anymore. We were using basins. But of course, when I got to the other room and saw the sink, I was like, well, you got a sink. They're like, but the sink doesn't work. The water doesn't work. The sink doesn't work. I'm like, can we get the sink to work? Because that would be so much better than all these buckets. And then I looked up and saw the brown box in the window up there. And they have the most windows you've ever seen. And all of them open to let in fresh air. They're all about some fresh air over there. But you can't have fresh air in a decontamination area. So I just labeled it the 3 sinks. You see it says, they labeled it clean water, the bleach, and the soap water. That's why I knew what I'm talking about is true, because I went and I was there with my camera. I'm like, really? They were looking at me like, what's your problem? You asked where do we clean instruments? Here it is. And I was so thankful for my 3 sinks and running water and the ability to clean items so that I do no harm to my patients. I thought we're blessed in America when I compare what I could be working with. And you see the buckets on the floor. Can you figure out how your back would feel bending over a bucket on the floor all day long? What type of shape you would be in? But we did get some clean instruments, and then we taught them how to set up their instruments. The one on the first picture is us teaching. The picture in the middle was us saying, you got all these basins. We're going to learn how to work with the basins. We went and found them. But the picture on the very end is actually, you will see up in the picture, I don't have a pointer, a sterilizer, and all the instruments they're going to put together on a sheet on the floor under the sterilizer. Now, you know that's not acceptable. And I asked them because they are good wood makers. They make furniture. I said, can't you make a table to put the instruments on to at least get it off the floor? You cleaned it and then you put it back down on the floor where we're walking by and we're walking on? Really? And you know, they thought about that. They were like, well, we could make a table. You could get a table. So for this particular hospital, when I went back a few days later, they had drug a table into there and they no longer had their instruments on the floor. They're willing to learn. They're willing to change. But we sometimes make shortcuts and we don't do what we're supposed to do right either. You know, we don't have our instruments the way they should be. But people are able to learn. Specimens, I got to get done. Specimens, I'm actually standing outside the decontam door, and outside to my left is a bucket that sits there with a red bag, and that's where they throw all the specimens they're not going to send to pathology. But in SPD in the window, the bottom picture, they were holding the specimens to go to pathology. I said, you can't bring the specimens to the clean side SPD and sit it on a window. That's not acceptable. And so things that I could change, I would talk about at the main meeting and change. In this particular table, I just wanted to show you our working table where they put the instruments together. That's a very old surgical bed. If you look at it, none of us would be able to work it. We wouldn't know how to get to Trendelenburg. We wouldn't know anything. But they actually put instruments together on that table, unless they have a patient. If they have a patient, they have to take the instruments off the table and put the patient, do the surgery, and then turn around and come back. They do have sterilizers over there. They're usually round sterilizers. I just wanted to show you at the top. The sterilizer, we talk about having to close hours. Most of us are pushing buttons and it shuts the door on its own. But here, you have to have a special instrument to lock those bolts in place, or like a pressure cooker, that sterilizer will blow up. I'm scared of them. And I have been places they use them, but I usually leave the whole area while they're sterilizing. And I come back later because that's how fearful I am of that type of sterilizer. Same reason why I don't have a pressure cooker in my house. This is just showing you the instruments. You see how they've thrown them in the first pan. They just threw them in there until I said, we got to have some order here. You can't sterilize instruments like that. And then all the containers they had and all the muslin wrap, they just threw things in there just haphazardly. And they didn't have any order. So the thing I worked on was order. Let's get some order. We're going to work on cleaning and order. And that's what I worked at. When you look at comparisons of how sometimes our SPDs look discombobulated, you just throw trays anywhere. Think of everybody has a holding rack in the SPD and how you come in some days and it looks like a war, like you had a war. Nothing's in any order. You don't know the dissection tray from the ABD tray, from the GYN tray, instruments all over the place. Look at the comparison. They're doing the same thing in a different order with different types of things in other countries. So SPD techs are SPD techs, and we can all do better. And I teach better. This is, I was talking IFUs and how to do stuff, and I found one taped to the wall on a decontamination procedure that they actually told us what we needed to do. They had to get the tab. There was a little bleach tab. They're not using that no more. But how to do soiled linen. This is the people who are going to wash the soiled linen you see hanging over in the tub. They actually had a red line on the floor. Some things they have copied us with a big sign, stop. They put it in English and Swahili. Don't come across this line. One of us is across the line with the shoe covers they gave us to put on. So IFUs we did talk about. They don't have many IFUs, but when they did, they put them up. Did they always follow them? I can't tell you that. And then as I end, the toilet. So this is in Bangladesh. This is outside. This room is right next to the sink where I cleaned instruments all day, every day for 7 days. And they use, this is called, I call a squat john. That means you have got to be able to have good, strong legs and squat. And they got the little cleaning brush. They got running water you see there into a container because that's usually how they clean themselves, with water. They put the toilet paper there because us from America were in town and we always asking, where's the toilet paper? So they brought the toilet paper in there. At first, I thought the hole you see over in the corner, I thought a mouse was living there. I was like, Lord Jesus, the mice, I can't go in here and use the bathroom. A mouse might come out the hole. You know, I was very ignorant. I would tell you that that's the hole where the water, when they're running it off that faucet, any water that's in there flows out. The floor is situated so that the water flows out through that hole. But that, if you can imagine the stench from a bathroom that does not flush, and people using it all day, because that was the only bathroom, and me standing there trying to clean instruments, I thought I would pass out. I was trying to figure out what to do. I actually at one point had a young lady who was working with me just hold the door closed. If you just hold the door closed, I can get these instruments cleaned because I can't breathe. And then thinking outside the boundaries, I was sitting there with my pesticide in my basin and I would just throw it down the sink. And then something said, why don't you start throwing it down the toilet? So I would wash a set of instruments and throw the pesticide down the toilet. And by the end of that day, the stench was not so bad because the pesticides agents changed the smell. And so I was able to work for 7 days with a toilet on the other side of my sink, with people coming in and out and not faint from the stench because I'd always throw that pesticide over into that toilet. In fact, when I left, they were like, are you leaving us some pesticide? Because they were happy. We found a solution. Well, we told them that, you know, we believe you can go get the cleaning agent that you have in your country and use it to put down that toilet as it is being used and follow, and we call it chase it with some water and you should be okay. But the bottom line is that I have been places where I have been so thankful for the rules and regulations in America. I have been able to compare the differences and be able to say to you, we have a job to do every day. And you all know me. Our job is to make sure patients have no untoward events. Our job is to make sure we follow the rules and the regulations and the IFUs. You can't make up an IFU. You can't shorten an IFU. That just is wrong. It's not fair to the patient who gets the short end of the deal that you made with yourself. If you are a true professional, you will follow the rules and the regulations. And you will maybe remember some of these pictures and say, we are truly lucky and or blessed with what we have to work with. I don't have every toy I want in my SPD, but I am most grateful for what I do have. I just recently got a borescope, and I'm getting ready to get the second borescope so that we can look down cannulated instruments, because I just feel bad, even though people are blowing and flushing and blowing, that we may not be giving the patient a clean instrument. I lead outside the boundaries by staying abreast of what's new and true, by reading and learning, by coming to meetings like this and learning, by taking what I learned back and putting it to work, not just storing it in the back of my brain, by trying to be the best SPD professional I can be. Because you see, what you do matters, even though you feel like sometimes it doesn't. What you do matters every day. You do not have the ability to say, today I will do good work, tomorrow I'll do substandard work. Because every instrument that you touch, that you process, every piece of equipment that you say you cleaned, has the ability to touch somebody. That somebody could be someone you love. That somebody could be you. Do your best every day. And just think about, we're blessed with what we have in America. We may not always be happy, but we are far better off than a lot of people in other countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sharon. That was a fantastic, eye-opening presentation. I thank you so much for your time today. And then members who are on, we will be going and leaving this presentation link, and we will be going into our meeting now. So if you need to, we can go into our meeting link. We have it posted onto our Facebook page, and that's available on the Western Wisconsin Chapter of Isham page. So go ahead and go on to that one, and then we will go ahead and start that meeting here shortly. Thank you so much. We'll see you shortly.